Shabbat Shalom. Today is the last day of our series, which we have titled, Hear My Voice, and we've taken that from John 10, where Yeshua says, my sheep hear my voice. We've learned so far in this series that we need to hear the voice of God because the voice of God generates life, it generates faith, and it generates obedience. So everything that we need, He creates in us just by us hearing His voice. Isn't that a great deal? Now, we've also learned that we are able to tell when we're hearing God or when we're not, right? Because the voice of God has the characteristics of life. His voice sounds like life. It does not sound like death. It sounds like the fruit of the Spirit. So when we hear His voice produces in us love, joy, peace, self-control. That's the one I need when I go to the pantry and I look at everything there. I need to hear the voice of the Lord saying, self-control. The voice of the enemy says, kill and eat. We've also learned in this series what the voice of God sounds like. His voice sounds like a father. At times, it sounds like a brother. There's a difference between the two. If you want to know, you can go to our website and watch all the teachings in this series. So we have them right there. But at times, the voice of God sounds like a mother. Some of us may have a problem with this. But if we remember that He is the one that created both of them in His image. So mother and father come from His image. Proverbs 1 says, do not forsake the teaching of your mother. And in the Hebrew, the word teaching is actually Torah. So do not forsake the Torah of your mother. Let that sink in. He sounds at times like a mother. Now we've also learned, what does He talk about? He talks about identity. He talks about destiny and calling. These are the same things that we hear from Him in the womb. So from the time that we're even in our mother's womb, He has been saying one thing and one thing only. And that is our identity, who we are to Him, our destiny, and our calling. It says that, Jeremiah says that the Lord called him, so He gave him a calling, even from his mother's womb, to be a prophet to the nations. So he had been hearing that even when he was in the womb. So we hear identity, calling, destiny, from the time that we are in our mother's womb. So we've learned all of this, and today is going to be the last of our series, if we can forward it here. So the title of our message today is, what is prophetic hearing? So we've studied about hearing God for ourselves, the need for it, what the sea sound like. Now we're going to learn about hearing God for others and through others. This is prophetic hearing. When we hear God for other people, and when other people hear God and they proclaim His word to us in a personal, individual way. Now before we do that, these are going to be 2 points in our message. Hearing God through others and hearing God for others. Before we do that, then we need to learn a little more about what exactly is prophetic hearing. What is the prophetic? What is prophecy? Well, 1 Corinthians 14:1, it says, pursue love, yet desire earnestly spiritual gifts. And out of all the spiritual gifts that you can desire, there is one that takes priority over all of them, but especially that you may prophesy. So what does it mean to prophesy? What does the Bible teach us? How does it define prophecy? Well, to prophesy is to receive a message supernaturally. To receive a message from God supernaturally. It is a message that is intended for others. So to prophesy is to receive a message supernaturally. Why do I say supernaturally? You see, because this is not something that we acquire through the natural senses, right? It's not like I see this person, yeah, he looks like a stingy person. Yeah, this is from the Spirit of God. He's revealing to me that, no, you are in the flesh. This is not supernatural. So it's not through my senses, right? People like me who are, I'm not so much a hearing person, I'm not a seeing person, I'm a sensing kind of a person. So I need to be extra careful that I don't judge, that I don't go on my first impression, because more often than not, it is wrong. And I've learned through the years in maturing in the Lord to be pleasantly surprised, to allow a person to be, to me, a blank canvas. And as the friendship develops, I begin to see this beautiful shape that is friendship in another person, another individual. But when I hear and I've learned to trust what I sense when it comes in a supernatural way. Because you see, the Scripture is all about hearing God. So He is speaking. He's speaking to you, about you, and in many occasions He's speaking to you about other people. That's prophecy. So it's all about hearing, and it's all about seeing. Sometimes He shows us things. Some of us are more visual. I think no, I don't think I shared this story with you. One time I had difficulty accepting and receiving the Lord's forgiveness for me. And I asked Him, Lord, is there a way? How do you want to show me? How can you show me that you've forgiven me? And immediately I received a visual. Now I'm calling it a visual because I'm not going to tell you that it was a vision. Yeah. He's my buddy, so he's I'm not going to tell you that I received a vision, right? Like Isaiah or Ezekiel. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But the Lord gave me a visual, and in my visual, I saw Him hugging me. And it was like, wow. You know, I was expecting Him to say, yeah, I'm okay with you. Yeah, you and I we're good. We're good. Kind of like a guy thing. We're good. No. He went out of His way to show me, I am bringing you close to me. I'm not just tolerating you, I'm not just accepting you, just barely, but I'm really embracing you. It communicated so much, a visual. So He speaks to us many times for others through a visual, right? Through the senses, but in a supernatural way. The senses, the physical senses, they actually stand for ways to communicate and to receive from the Lord. The sense of feeling, you get a feel and He speaks to you for others that way. How about taste? Taste and see that the Lord is good. Can you taste something that is good so you can discern? The taste is for discerning, and so is the smell. So you can smell something that is pleasing to the Lord. So you can see something in a person's life that you discern is pleasing to the Lord. that you taste that is good about them. And you can tell them. You know, the Lord showed me that He's pleased with you. That activity that you do is awesome. Actually, speaking of Chris and Sarah and Connor, the little boy. One time, Chris, you know that Chris is a fisherman, and the Lord has really blessed him in fishing and competing and winning, and it's really been a blessing to see that. At the beginning, him and I were talking, and I said a phrase that I never thought it would be any kind of prophetic statement, but it turned out to be so. Because I said to Chris, I know someone that says that you should have a hobby that you're so good at it that if you could actually make a living out of it. And it spoke to Chris, and it was a confirmation from the Lord that it was okay for him to pursue fishing. And now it's almost looking like he could actually make a living out of this. And maybe a little more than a living. Which is great. And so you speak and you sense it. I sense that I didn't think of it as a prophetic word, but I sense that this was a thought that I needed to tell Chris. And it turned out to be that the Lord was in it so much that it blessed him, really in a prophetic way. So we speak, we receive communications from the Lord for other people. That is prophecy. We receive it in a supernatural way. So we receive it and naturally we speak it. We speak on behalf of God. The next verse is 1 Corinthians 14:3. I have it on the screen. It says, but one who prophesies speaks. Speaks. One who prophesies speaks to men and women, to people, for edification and exhortation and consolation. We're going to return in a moment to those three concepts because they are really important. But I want us to focus on this fact of speaking. And you say, well, okay, speaking, I get it. What else can you say about speaking? Well, hold on. How about we break it down a little bit? You see, because speaking means when we speak, we bring things into order. We define things when we speak, when we call them by their name, we define them and we organize things. It brings order. When God speaks, He brings order. He defines things, and so they are organized and they fall into different categories, into different groups. When we speak from the Lord, it brings order. We speak to people, and it has an effect. A word from the Lord brings order. It brings definition, it defines, it confirms what the Lord has been speaking. So prophetic message are speaking into people's lives with the effect that things are brought to order supernaturally. We need this. This is the reason why Paul says this should be priority. Out of all the gifts, this one should be priority to you. You see, order into our lives comes by revealing what a problem may be. You may be facing a problem at work, at home, with a child, and you need to know what the nature of the problem is. What the nature is of what is going on in this child's life. You need to know this. You know what that's called? It's called a word of knowledge. You receive a word of knowledge from God. It is knowing something that you couldn't have known naturally, only by a revelation. And He speaks to you, and He shows you, He reveals. And you know. You know that you know that you know. The Spirit of God, you know, He's spoken to you, He's shown you. This is the name, this is what's going on. Wow. That's half of the problem right there. So, just to know what's going on. You can calm down and relax. A pastor friend of mine told me, you don't raise children for when they are 20. You raise children for when they are 30. So by the time they get to 30, in most cases, they've settled, they've come back, they are defined, and at 20, they're almost 15. Sorry for all of you that are. So this was a great word for me. That helped me understand, oh, okay, now I understand the nature of what I'm dealing with. I can relax. It was a word of knowledge for me because it helped me. Now, that's only half of the problem though. But bringing order into one's life is also revealing the solution to a problem. And that is a word of wisdom. There is a word of knowledge. You come to know the nature of the problem. And then a word of wisdom. You come to know a supernatural solution to the problem. Praise God. Yeah. We need to live dependent on the supernatural, because guess what? We have a fight, we have a war that is not against flesh and blood. We already are engaged in a supernatural war. We can't fight it naturally. We won't win that way. It needs to be rooted in the supernatural. So we need words of knowledge and we need words of wisdom. We need this gift of prophecy in our lives. And Paul knew it. In 1 Corinthians 12:4, it says, now there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of ministries, and the same Lord. There are varieties of effects, but the same God who works all things in all persons. But to each one is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good, of the good of the body. Verse 8. For the one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, and to another the word of knowledge according to the same. And it is all for the common good, for the good of the body of the fellowship. All right, so what is prophecy? What does it mean to prophesy? So it means to receive a supernatural message from God, to speak it in a way that brings order in people's lives, and it means to help other people. It means to help other people become fruitful. To prophesy is to help people become fruitful. Where do I get this from? All right, let's go back to verse 3. We can have it, the next verse. It's verse 3. We're going to get into the details of this verse. It says, but one who prophesies speaks to men for edification and exhortation and consolation. So let's break down these three very important words. Edification, to build. To build, right? To build what? To build a home. What is a home? A family. How do you build a family? Through sons. Your daughters will marry someone and they will help build another home. Your sons will take wives and they will continue your legacy. Both ways. Both are involved in building homes, building families. What are we talking here? What are we talking about? Well, this is speaking, this edification is speaking of helping people become fruitful, having fruit that reproduces. That's what having sons means. and having children. They are going to have other children. So you have fruit. The Lord created in nature fruit that have seed in themselves so that they can reproduce and continue on and on. So edification is to build somebody so that they become fruitful. So there's a mix of metaphors. Because you're building something, but it's not a physical building. It's a family. It's a home and a family. You're building, edifying people so they become fruitful. So speaking prophetically into people's lives is helping them become fruitful. Exhortation. Exhortation is to comfort people. You would think, people in the name of exhortation, they bring anything but comfort. But the word actually does mean comfort. You see, because this exhortation is with a word bringing rest in people's lives. How do you bring rest to someone else? By freeing them, by ministering freedom to them from confusion, from turmoil, from internal not knowing what in the world is going on. So through exhortation, you tell people, no, you are a son. You are not an orphan. You are loved. And this word brings rest to them, because when you speak it in a prophetic way, it solves the confusion inside of them. This is supernatural ministry. And once they have their confusion and turmoil resolved, they can walk. They can walk fast. They can make progress in their lives. They can run. They can run with the Lord. Having healing and freedom in their lives. Edification, to build people up so they are fruitful. Exhortation, to free people from confusion. Consolation. Consolation means to bring, this is an interesting word. In the Greek, this word consolation is made up of two words. One is para, like paralegal, so it means alongside, or parable, to throw something alongside, to throw a story alongside. So para, and the other word is mythos. We get the word myth. But it really is speaking of stories. So what it means, this word, consolation, it means to bring alongside a story. Alongside what? Alongside your story. You see, you have a story. What's the gist of the story? The gist of a story is a plot. That's what makes a good story. A plot. It is good unless it is your story. Because plot, the gist of plot is a problem.
Yeah.
You have a problem, it develops, it shows, and something happens in the movie, and there it is, all over you. This huge problem. What are you going to do now with this? And then it begins the process of solving the problem, right? And it all ends well and everybody's happy. So to bring in a story alongside your story is to give you hope that your plot will have a solution and a good ending in the Lord. The story of stories in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew scriptures, is the redemption from Egypt, which really is a preamble, a foundation for the redemption in the Messiah Yeshua. Slaves redeemed by the power of God that defeated the enemy, and you walk free. Every story is contained in that story. Every story is about that same story. Enslaved to a power that only God can deliver you from. So to speak a prophetic word for comfort, for consolation, is to bring alongside your story another story, a story of God that shows that your story, that you have hope in your story, that God will bring solution. This is speaking prophetically to other people. Wow. That's only point one. I told you not to be deceived by my shortness of notes. All right, so that is prophecy. So hearing God through others then. What's the story then? Well, now we take all of this and we understand what the Lord does to us when He speaks to us through other people. 1 Corinthians 14:22 says, if we could have it okay on the screen, it says, so then tongues are for a sign, not to those who believe, but to unbelievers, to Jewish unbelievers. But prophecy, which is what we're talking about, prophecy is also a sign. Did you know that? Prophecy is a sign. And it says, not to unbelievers, but to you and me. So you're looking, let me put it this way. What exactly is a sign? Well, a sign is a confirmation. A sign is a confirmation. When you see a sign on the road that says, this is, the street where you're supposed to be on, or you feel better, you confirm it, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Or if you see a policeman behind you and you look for a sign to speed limit, oh, okay, yeah, I'm good. You're confirmed, right? So, this is what a sign is. Prophecy is a sign. You need signs in your life. You need confirmations from the Lord all the time. Guess what? You need prophecy.
Yeah.
We, as a body, we need prophetic ministry.
Yes.
Let me tell you a quick story because the time is escaping us. I gave a friend of mine a word that, well, it just, it happened. I don't know how else to explain it. I said to him, and I felt this just out of the blue, I said, he's mid-30s, never been married, great guy. And I said to him, I feel like she is a person that you already know. Within the year, he married his boss.
What a world.
Yeah. But imagine giving such a word. You need practice. We need this. This is something that we learn, something that we get better at. If you had a gift of teaching, wouldn't you read books about learning how to be a better teacher? Right? If you have a gift of prophetic ministry, which Paul says, everyone should desire this. So, can you get better? Yeah. Would you mess up sometimes? Well, if your gift is teaching, you can mess up sometimes. So if your gift is prophetic ministry, is it okay if we are messy? Yeah. we're learning. This isn't, we're not Isaiah and Ezekiel. It's not that kind of prophetic ministry. It is a spiritual gift. It's an ability that He wants to develop in us. So this is hearing God through others. Finally, we have hearing God for others. In 1 Corinthians 14:31, it says, "For you can all prophesy one by one, that all may learn and all may be exhorted." Let me ask you a question. When it says that all may be exhorted, does that really mean all? Everyone can be exhorted? Yeah, no problem there, right? When it says that all may learn, do you have a problem with that phrase? I mean, all means all, that right?
Yeah.
All may learn, great, no problem there. But what about this? For you can all prophesy. Does that really mean all?
Yes.
Same word, same sentence. We can't change the meaning of it right at the beginning and then have another meaning at the end of this verse. All means everyone. Everyone can. Not everyone does, but they could if they allow themselves to have that gift developed. So we are already speaking to people, and I'm going to conclude with this. We are already speaking to people's lives, don't we? We already have friends, even Facebook friends. We already have people, family. We already have friends, people that we speak into their lives. You see, we have people that we encourage. We have people that we give them our opinion, don't we? Right? Some of them even ask our opinion. What a dangerous thing. What if we started hearing God as the source for the way we talk to other people?
Yeah.
So that when we give our opinion, what if it was what we hear from the Lord?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have an amazing effect in our lives? You see, it's that easy. We're already speaking to people's lives. What we need is to learn and practice and develop the ability to connect with the Lord so that we can speak in their lives words from His heart.
Yeah.
What do you say to a sick person? What do you say to a person with cancer? Well, isn't that a great thing that you don't have to say anything? You can speak from the Lord.
Amen.
We can all prophesy.